What is up, everybody? This week we are going to continue our work in ancient China, and today we're going to do a lesson on some of the philosophical religious traditions that emerged at that time, and we're going to do an overview of Taoism and Confucianism. So for today's lesson, I'm going to need an exit ticket, and two different points you'll be able to see. I want you to just stop, type a little bit about what we just learned, and then y'all can email that to me when you're done, and we'll go over it from there. So some of the vocabulary words that you're going to encounter here that are kind of new, kind of weird, you might have trouble reading them, or just how do I pronounce them. The first one is Confucius. If you kind of break it down, con as in con man, fu as in future, and shush as in, shush, right? So then Taoism is a word you'll often encounter it written with a T, but you still just pronounce it Taoism. It's like Dow, like the Dow Jones Industrial Average, Taoism. And then and this next word was really tricky for me. Xiao, Hsiao. I would have thought it was show. I don't know. And then Wu Wei. Sounds just kind of, that one's pretty easy. And then this one, I still not sure if I'm getting it right, but this is filial. So, all right, now that we've covered that, let's move on. So Confucianism is a philosophical and religious tradition where the key to maintaining society is through traditional relationships. It states that human beings are teachable and can improve both individually and through interactions with the community. So if you think about this, this is just it's an idea, it's a tradition that's very focused on a community, your role in the community, and how the community can help you improve, and thereby you will improve the community. And this symbol over here, that way, that's the symbol for Confucianism. So if you ever see that on a tombstone, or if you're traveling abroad and you see that, you'll know that's a Confucian symbol, excuse me. And so here are some key points on Confucianism. It was founded by Confucius in the 6th, 5th century BC, so that's where it gets its name. And the main principle is Ren, which describes the way that people should behave in a loving and selfless and moral way. So it's pretty standard for a lot of religious and philosophical doctrines. That's, be loving, be selfless, be moral. And the two guiding principles are Li and Yi. Li describes actions that are right because of the needs of society, and Yi describes the actions that are inherently right, good, and moral. So, since we're in these weird coronavirus times, a good example of Li would be wearing a mask when you go to Walmart, right? It has moral value because protecting yourself and protecting other people from you is overall good for society. So that would be kind of an example of Li. Whereas Yi describes the actions that are just inherently right, good, or moral. So if you think about giving to charity, not killing anybody, not committing murder, those things always good and kind of always will be good. They're good in and of themselves, as opposed to the other, which has a direct impact on the society that we're living in. Now, Shou is the principle of filial piety, which means children should always respect their parents. And I want to take a minute right here. Some of y'all might not recognize this word, piety. Maybe you've seen it before in an ancient Greek class or another class where you've touched on religious or philosophical thoughts. And that's a word that is very much connected to religious beliefs, but what we mean here is reverence. And this word that we learned to pronounce earlier at the beginning of the lesson, filial, if you'll look, kind of looks like family. So family, reverence. It just means to be reverent for your family and place, I mean, all cultures place a lot of value on family, but here they're wanting you to really be reverent with it. And then for Confucians, virtue is seen as leading by proper moral example. So how you act in the world and how good of an example you set for others by thinking about your li, thinking about yi, being reverent for your family, and, you know, acting in the loving, selfless way that was mentioned earlier. That's what makes you virtuous. That's virtue for a Confucian. So right here, this is first part of your exit ticket. I want you to pause the video and just type 2 or 3 sentences and give me your first initial thoughts on Confucianism, what you think about what we've gone over so far. And when you're done, hit play. So, okay, we're going to move on. So, Taoism is a philosophical and religious tradition that promotes harmony and unity with nature, encourages people to live calmly and peacefully. It teaches that intervening in life's events cause conflict and destruction, so people should limit their interference and do what is required. And the big symbol just above my head is a yin yang. I'm sure y'all are all familiar with that at this point. I know when I was a kid in the 90s, for some reason, a yin yang was put on every t-shirt, necklace, bracelet. I mean, from like 95 to 98, you couldn't get away from the thing. So I'm very familiar with it. I think I still have all my yin yang bracelets somewhere. So I got off topic there, but it's unlike Confucianism. It's very much concerned with more lofty ideals than just your everyday human interaction. So, much like Confucianism, it was founded in the 6th and 5th century BC. The main principle is Tao, which means the way. All things in the universe are connected through the Tao. Wu Wei is the method of following the Tao. This involves living in harmony and letting things take their natural course without interference. The principle of yin yang states that opposites fit together and depend on each other for harmony. So yin yang, opposites, they fit together. If we go back and look at the last slide, you'll see it was a black and a white, and they were fitting together, and harmony only comes once they fit together. And virtue for a Taoist is less like virtue for a Confucian, where you need to stay true to yourself instead of trying to meet the standards set by others. You need to do what's true to you. It's what you might hear somebody say, you know, live your truth or speak your truth is a common thing that people say today. And that is very much similar to what they're thinking and what they're getting at there. Okay. After going over that material, pause, go back if you need to. I know sometimes Mr. Hill can talk kind of fast, but pause, jot down 3 or 4 sentences and give me your first impressions, and email me those, and that will count as your exit ticket for this class. So pause. All right. So now let's think about these 2 different philosophies compared to one another. Confucianism, with its focus on reverence for the family and improving yourself so you can therefore improve society. It's very much focused on the world that you're in right now and the external connections that you're already engaged in. When you contrast that to Taoism, it's very concerned with lofty. It's in Taoism it talks about the way, and the way. Who knows, right? That's way outside of your head. That comes from inner reflection and thinking and reading and being more engaged. It's very much focused on your inner self. So in Confucianism, we have a very grounded, very here on earth kind of thinking about it. But with Taoism, it's more lofty and esoteric, one might say. So think about those two competing ideas, two different ways of looking at the world. Because for two philosophical traditions to emerge in the same place at relatively the same time, those are two very different ways of looking at the world. One very grounded, one very lofty. Which brings us into your writing assignment. I want you to go back and look at slides 4 and 7, and I want you to explain each of the terms in your own way. So read what's on the slide about Ren, Lianyi, Xiao, Dao, Wu Wei, Yin Yang. And then I want you to explain it back to me in your own words. And then next, I want you to think about the two separate ways of viewing the world. That happens with Confucianism and happens with Taoism. And I want you to just write a few sentences, 3 or 4 sentences, about which do you think would have been easiest for the average person in China in the 5th century to follow. That's to say, do you think it would be more easy to try to cultivate yourself in a way that benefited society, or do you think it would have been easier to follow your true self, as we said on the previous slide? I'm going to be uploading the slides so you can look at them, and always you can replay this video and watch it again if there's anything else you need to go over. And so just once you've written that all out, email it back to me and we will go from there, and I'll get you your next assignment next week. Stay safe. Wear your mask.